Those who were able to see this morning the levaya of Rabban Shel Kol Bnei HaGola, the leader of the entire Jewish community in the entire globe, Rabbenu Chaim, Kanievsky, it's very, very difficult, especially for Ketanei Ketanim such as myself, to be able to even convey or understand the impact of the loss of a Talmid Chacham of this stature. Sometimes the easiest way to go about it is really through stories. I want to share a story. It's a little bit different, a little bit lengthier than our usual 2-minute Dvar Halacha, but I want to convey the story with you. This is found by said over by Rabbi Spiro in his book, Touched by Their Faith. A number of years ago, there was a bar mitzvah bachur, a bar mitzvah boy in Yerushalayim HaKodesh that made a siyum on the entire Seder Moed of Shas. I'm talking about not the Mishnayot, but the Gemarot, Masechtot of the entire Seder Moed. A sizable portion of Gemara. He made a siyum at his bar mitzvah, an amazing accomplishment even for an adult, and he did it around the time of his bar mitzvah. And at the bar mitzvah, his father was so proud of him that he got up at the bar mitzvah and totally unscripted, unplanned, he said to his son, "My son, we are all so proud of what you've accomplished. Ask me anything. Your wish is my command." And the son, with like 20 seconds of thought, he looks at his father and he says, "Abba, my wish is that you shall live." What was the understanding was the meaning. The father was born with a congenital heart condition, and everybody knew that he was not a healthy man. That's why there were so many people by the bar mitzvah, because nobody knew how long he would be able to continue living and being a part of his son's life. And his son just asked, "My one wish is that Abba, you should live." All eyes were on the father. How can a person commit to such a promise? It's impossible. It's not biyadenu. But the father said to his son, "B'li neder, I will do everything within my power to be able to continue to live. I'm so proud of him." So after the bar mitzvah, the father, he redoubles his efforts. He goes to specialists, heart specialists. He goes through all the tests, goes through everything he can possibly do to make good on his promise that he's going to live for his son. He comes to the end of the line. Long story short, he walks out of the hospital. A doctor in the hospital in Yerushalayim tells him, "Kivodo, we have done everything we can. The situation is what it is. You're born with this heart condition. There's really almost nothing that we can do. We've exhausted all possibilities." The father goes outside of the hospital. He sits down on a bench. He begins to cry. A religious doctor comes. He sees someone crying at the hospital. He says, "What's going on?" And the father tells him, "They just told me that that's nothing more I can do." So the religious doctor turns to the man and says, "You and I both know it's not up to doctors. Doctors don't decide people's fate. We believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Go to Bnei Brak right now. Get on a bus. Go to Bnei Brak. Go to the home of the Stipler Gaon. Ask him for bracha. He'll pray for you." So the man takes the advice. He has nothing else to do. He goes on a bus. He goes to Bnei Brak. He stands outside the home of the Stipler Gaon, the father of Rabbenu Chaim Kanievsky. And the Stipler was hard of hearing. He couldn't hear, so he had to write down what your request was, and you submit it to the Gaon. He saw that on his paper in front of him, the man asked for a request for Arichut Yamim. So the Stipler said, "Arichut Yamim for this name." He says, "I give you a bracha, you shall have Arichut Yamim." Wonderful, what more could there be? The father turns to the Stipler Gaon and he says, "I don't need a bracha. I need a haftacha." It means I need not a blessing, I need a promise. I need you to promise me I'm going to have Arichut Yamim. Now we have to understand who the Stipler Gaon was. It's very difficult for us to even relate to the level that he was on. He was not living in this world. But even on the level of the Gaon, he said, "I cannot give you a promise for Arichut Yamim. But if you want a promise, get on the bus, go back to Yerushalayim. There is there a Jew, he lives in Mea She'arim. And what this Jew decides in Shamayim, they agree. What this Jew is posek, they agree to what he says." So he looks at the address, he gives it to this individual. The person gets on the bus, goes back to Yerushalayim, goes to Mea She'arim, and he's outside the door of none other than the posek hador, Rabbenu Yosef Shalom El Yashiv. He knocks on the door and he says, "I came with this note from the Stipler Gaon. He said, you should give me a promise, Avtacha Arichut Yamim." So Rabbi Yashiv looks at the note and he said, "The Stipler said I should promise you?" "Yeah," he said, "You should promise me." So Rabbi Yashiv gets up from his chair and he says these words. He says, I, Yosef Shalom El Yashiv, am posek, I rule with the koach HaTorah, with the strength of Torah, that you should have Arichut Yamim, that you should live a long life. It's 45 years since that point, since the story was written, and the man is still living. We can understand the koach HaTorah, a person who puts his entire fiber of his being, every ounce of strength and attention. There was nothing else that existed in this man's life. He didn't look from the outside into Torah. Everything he observed in the world was from the perspective of Torah and out. It was a pure corner of the world, one of the last places that exists that is designated exclusively for Torah. we have marbitzei Torah, people who teach Torah, we have people who do kiruv zechokim, and they are all necessary. But we also need people in the world who are devoted 100% exclusively to Limud Torah on the highest level. Rabbenu Chaim Kanievsky was somebody who even the Gedolim were speechless about. There were great geniuses. Chaim Kreisworth, the Rav of Antwerp, who himself was known as a genius in Torah, he came to speak to Chaim Kanievsky. And when he left, he was laughing with excitement. He says, I can't understand such a thing. A person who had at his fingertips every single comment on the Shulchan Aruch, every single commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, it's at his fingertips. I don't know what to do for such a person. So he went to go buy him a new coat, a new jacket. He says, this is like buying a new cover for the Sefer Torah. We have a living Sefer Torah, and now, unfortunately, we have lost it. Kashes lukan shel tzadikim kisefat bet Elokenu, that the loss of tzadikim is equivalent to the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. There is an unimaginable void in the world right now for Torah. So what do we do? So I want to just translate for you because I'm just a curator. That's not me.